صديقي العزيز. Ready? Just give me top cue. Ready to go? Okay. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and let's go straight to our second panel today. We have an exceptional panel. I don't know if you attended the morning session, and Mr. Araikat was in the session and Ambassador Kurtzer. So I heard what they had to say, so I will try to avoid asking them questions, the same ones, but I cannot avoid some repetition and overlapping because we're talking about the same issues, Arab Spring. Everywhere you go, people want to hear about Arab Spring. My name is Muwaffa Harb. I'm a journalist, and I will be the moderator. I don't know if the word moderator comes from being moderate. I'm a hardliner, so, but I'll be a moderator today. We try to make it lively. We would hear from our panelists. Each one of them will make a 3 to 5 minutes presentation because we want to open the floor for each one of you. And I believe Q&As make usually the session more interesting, and we would like to hear from you. And we will ask again each panelist to make a brief presentation, 3 to 5 minutes. This is a very important topic we're going to discuss, and I think we have the right selection of people. Some of them are good friends of mine, and I've known him for a long time, like Ambassador Abdul Ghaffar from Washington. It's so good to see him again. Relationship between the US and the Muslim world, and maybe today we'll focus on the Arab world. We talked a lot about it over the past 10 years, since September 11, when people in the United States and the Western world discovered a different kind of Middle East. And all of a sudden, everyone is talking about diplomacy. And when President Bush said, "Why do they hate us?" and the invasion of Iraq and the war in Afghanistan and the war on terror, these are issues that dominated U.S. Arab and Muslim relationship. Right now, it's a different ball game. In less than 10 years, we're talking about different issues. Arab democracies, Arab Spring, how this is going to play into U.S.-Arab relations, the generators of resentments that used to poison Arab and U.S. relationship, do they still exist? What is the role of the United States in the new Arab political order? Can we call it new Arab Spring? Is it really spring? Who's planting the seeds, and what do we expect? Do we expect flowers, civil wars, democracy, rule of law? And these are all issues that I don't think anyone has clear answer to any of these issues. So that's why, when you don't have clear answers, it's not black and white. This is the role of analyst. We try not to confuse you. We try to give you as much insight as possible. Yesterday, and I will make my notes so brief, I'm the moderator, I will ask questions later on. But yesterday, some of our friends after the dinner, we went to a charming coffee shop in Tangier, and we were sipping Moroccan tea. And one of the guys, the locals came and said to me, and I think he told me he's a taxi driver, very smart guy, and he said to me, Arabs are demonstrating, calling for democracies. But I was watching the news. People in the US have democracy in Greece and in Spain and Italy, but they are demonstrating. What are they demonstrating for? So it's not sometimes, local politics. When people discover local politics, they're talking about one thing. They want better lives. Would the Arab Spring bring better lives? I remember when former President Reagan in the election, when he defeated President Carter, he asked the voters one question. Before you go to vote, ask yourself, are you better off today than you were 4 years ago? That was a very simple question, and President Reagan won overwhelmingly, because at the end of the day, people want better lives. Some people would call it dignity, some people would call it freedom, some people would call it, different names, but they want better lives. Would the Arab Spring bring better lives today to the Arabs? And I would like to open the floor right now to our panelists. I would start by Ambassador Abdul Ghaffar. He's, and please correct me if I'm wrong, you were ambassador in Washington, and then you became a minister for foreign affairs. And now you are a consultant and advisor to His Majesty the King of Bahrain, and you run a think tank for strategic studies in Bahrain. So please go ahead, and we're all listening to your presentation. And please, between 3 to 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to thank the friends in Amadeus for inviting me to be on this panel. I know that I have very short time. I'll try my best to put the so-called Arab Spring in the context. From the very beginning, I prefer to call Arab Spring Arab Awakening to give it a sort of historical connection with the past. And this reminded me of a book written in 1938 by George Antonius, which is called The Arab Awakening. In Arabic, we call it Yaqzat al-Arab. And if you remember in the 70s, especially after the Six-Day Wars, there was something called Islamic Awakening. Now, this awakening, I can call it Democratic Awakening. But I have to connect different important events in our history. First of all, in the beginning of the late 40s, 50s, in main Arab countries, it was a coup d'etat era, which, you know, there are coup d'etats in the name of revolution, and totalitarian regime was established. And after that, you know, we went to the 1973 war and the peace, and the Arab position was scattered because of the peace agreement with Egypt, and all the story which you know. Secondly, the civil war in Lebanon, which was very, very serious for the region in general, historically, because Lebanon was a model, an example that how religions, sects, ethnic groups can live together. That was also collapsed, unfortunately, in 1975 with the civil war started. And then we have many other big events, Iran-Iraq war, the occupation of Kuwait, then Afghanistan, the occupation of Iraq. I want to put all this in context and mention that the United States of America, as a major power, was involved in all these events. And I see most of people in front of me from young generation, and I want to remind them of a book which is called The Game of Nations, which was written by a CIA person. His name is Miles Copeland, and it was published, I think, in 1969, if I'm correct. It's out of print, but I have a copy. I just started reading it 2-3 weeks ago to remember what happened in the 50s when the Gamal Abdel Nasser coup d'etat was helped, I think, by the American administration at that time. What I want to mention that United States have been always, you know, in the region, and all these big events, one way or the other, left impact on the Arab psychology and Arab historical development. And also, I have to mention the internal issues. I don't want to separate internal issues, important internal issues in our region, which is extremely important to connect it to what's happening today. One of the things that in the Arab world, we have a problem with the concept of state and also with the concept of society. Likewise, the concept of a state in the Arab world, it is not institutionalized in a way which allow the development of democracy. Secondly, even in our societies, socially, the development was not to the extent that we can go beyond our sectarian identity and beyond our ethnic identity, because, you know, in the Arab world, we have a mixture of all these things. And that's why when we look at Iraq, in Iraq, we don't have the democracy which was expected because of this sectarian and ethnic strife and struggles which are going on in Iraq. When I come to our region, the Gulf, because I'm sure that other panelists would concentrate on Palestinian questions, on more on United States, but I want to concentrate a little bit on the GCC. 2 more minutes. How I can talk about GCC countries in 2 more minutes. The Gulf Cooperation Council an organizational which is extremely important, and it is one of the most developed in the Arab world, talking about the development of education and scientific things and other things. But also it is extremely important that the relationship with the United States, and also we have also in our neighborhood a difficult country which is called Iran. And that's why, being from Bahrain, you may ask me what happened in Bahrain. Bahrain was, in general, a victim of regional rivalry between United States, Iran, and some GCC countries. And I am not trying to say that there is no legitimate demands in Bahrain. Of course, as you know, Bahrain is an elected parliament. We have a big program which is initiated by King of Bahrain, King Hamad, in 1999. And from the pillar of that initiative is how to institutionalize the democratic process in Bahrain. Thus we started, but I know that the Bahraini people, they have more expectations, and therefore there was another national dialogue, and there are many suggestions in this national dialogue, including the amendment of the constitution, which will occur in the coming months. And one other thing that I don't want also to rule out, the role of Iran. Unfortunately, Iran played a very negative role, not in Bahrain, in other GCC countries in the region. Iran took advantage of Shiism to bring some Shia citizens of our region under the loyalty of sectarianism rather than loyalty to their country. But this is a very, very small number. This Shia group is very, very small number, and I can emphasize on that. They are not a big number, but although they are small number, they are well connected with Iran, and there are a lot of evidence which happened to Bahrain and in Saudi Arabia village, and also in Kuwait, and I don't want to go in details, but in the question answer I can do some more. Thank you very much.
Mr. Abdel Ghaffar, you made a lot of important statements, and I'm sure when we open the floor, a lot of people would ask you and try to challenge what you have to say, but thank you for your insights. And now we move on to our second panelist, Mr. Jawad Kurdaidi, and he's the president of the Moroccan Institute for International Relations. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you.
I think it's open. Just... Yeah, please.
Merci. On ne peut pas comprendre les relations entre les États-Unis et le monde arabe si on ne part pas, d'un postulat qui est l'alliance stratégique des États-Unis avec Israël et le soutien inconditionnel des États-Unis à Israël. Et je voudrais, pour étayer ce postulat, reprendre très brièvement l'histoire des relations entre les États-Unis et le monde arabe. Cette histoire commence en 1945 avec l'accord stratégique entre les États-Unis et l'Arabie saoudite. Rappelez-vous, Franklin Roosevelt, le roi Abdelaziz, avec un deal, l'Arabie saoudite fournit le pétrole et les États-Unis protègent militairement l'Arabie saoudite. Et puis il y a eu en 1948 la création de l'État Israël et comme je vous l'ai dit, l'alliance stratégique et le soutien inconditionnel. Ça, je pense que c'est très important. Ensuite, qu'est-ce qui s'est passé? Il y a eu un petit dégel avec Jimmy Carter. Rappelez-vous, ce président avait essayé un petit peu d'améliorer les relations entre les États arabes et les États-Unis et le fameux accord de Camp David en 1978 entre Feu Anwar Sadat et Menachem Begin. Et là, les relations se sont un petit peu améliorées avec les États arabes, notamment avec l'Égypte, la Jordanie et l'Arabie saoudite. En 1991, il y a eu la conférence de Madrid, soutenue par les États-Unis, ensuite les accords d'Oslo en 1973 et en 2001, les attentats terroristes, comme vous le savez, de septembre 2001. Et je pense qu'on a connu la pire période des relations entre les États-Unis et le monde arabe avec le président Bush. Je pense que c'était vraiment la calamité, en tout cas pour nos pays arabes. Alors est venu le président Obama. Je ne vous cache pas, avec beaucoup d'espoir. Rappelez-vous le discours du 4 juin 2009, le discours du Caire, où le président Obama a parlé d'un changement de cap de la politique américaine vis-à-vis des pays arabes et d'un nouveau départ. Et ce qui lui a valu le prix Nobel de la paix, rappelez-vous, le 9 octobre 2009. Malheureusement, ces espoirs ont été déçus. Et je le dis ici, les pays arabes et musulmans ont été déçus par le président Obama parce qu'il n'a pas pu, et je voudrais très rapidement vous expliquer pourquoi, il n'a pas pu véritablement changer le cap de la politique américaine vis-à-vis des pays arabes et notamment de la Palestine. Parce que nous, Arabes, le problème palestinien est le problème numéro 1 des relations entre les États-Unis et le monde arabe. Et tant que ce problème-là ne sera pas résolu, il n'y aura pas d'amélioration notable des relations entre le Maroc, entre les pays arabes et les États-Unis. Alors pourquoi Obama n'a pas pu? Eh bien, moi, je vais souvent aux États-Unis, je peux témoigner, il y a une puissance extraordinaire du lobby sioniste aux États-Unis. Ils sont partout, ils sont au Congrès. Il y a beaucoup de congressmen qui sont d'origine juive et qui sont américains, bien sûr. Les médias, les affaires, ils sont, et je termine, ils sont absolument partout. Et le président Obama, qui veut se faire réélire l'année prochaine, ne peut pas ne pas tenir compte, parce que si il prend des positions anti-israéliennes, il ne sera pas élu en 2012. Et c'est pour cela qu'il a fait marche arrière. Alors ce qu'il faut espérer, et je termine par là, c'est que s'il est réélu en 2012, peut-être fera-t-il quelque chose, et je vous remercie.
Thank you very much for your insights. I'm a moderator. I have a lot of things to challenge in what you have to say, but I would leave that to Ambassador Kurtzer. He's a former ambassador of the United States in Egypt during the honeymoon days of Egypt and Washington, and he was also ambassador in Israel. And some people may say he's a former ambassador, but I have some insights. He's been offered a lot of positions in this new administration, and he turned them down, I was told. And so he's not totally former, he's still plugged in, and we would like to hear from you.
Thank you very much. In the earlier session, I had a chance to describe U.S. thinking with respect to the Arab awakenings, and I would be happy in the question and answer period to review some of those issues. I want to focus in this session on U.S. policy with respect to the Arab-Israeli conflict and the conflict resolution process, and to analyze what constitutes American thinking at this point. I would note, however, just in response to our previous speaker, I spent some time when I was ambassador both to Egypt and to Israel trying to encourage academic institutions to institute American studies. Not because of a cultural bias on my part. We have in the United States a range of institutions that study the Middle East. We don't always do a great job in understanding the Middle East, but we try to study it. And my sense, having worked in this area for 30 years, having done my academic work here, is that there still is not a deep enough understanding of our society. And in that respect, if I were to pose a question to the previous speaker, it really is a little overly simplistic to suggest that American policy with respect to the Arab-Israeli conflict is somehow manipulated by a Zionist lobby. There's a lot of reasons why the United States brings its influence to bear in trying to resolve the Arab-Israeli conflict. One of the factors, as it is in every country, is the domestic politics in the United States, but it is not the only factor, and in most respects, it's not even the most important factor. We can discuss this further if you wish during the question and answer. I want to make rather maybe one short point at this opening. I was reminded the other day when I was trying to think of a way to collect my thoughts about the current impasse in the Middle East peace process of a skit which is put on by the British comedy group Monty Python. They have a skit called the 100-meter dash for runners with no sense of direction, where the runners line up at the starting gate, the starter fires the pistol, and the runners run off in every direction except straight. You have now the two contesting parties, Israel and Palestine, and the third party, the United States, heading off in entirely inconsistent directions with each other. And it's the first time, frankly, since the advent of the modern peace process that started at Madrid in 1991 that you have such a lack of coordinated objectives, coordinated goals. Palestine, out of frustration with American policy, out of anger with Israeli policy, out of a belief that the current government in Israel doesn't want to make peace, has decided on an approach of reconciliation between the Palestinian Authority, or Fatah, and Hamas, has also decided to bring the issue of Palestine's membership in international organizations to the forefront of the international agenda. How these two initiatives, which on their face are unobjectionable, how they promote the idea of a peace process remains to be understood. Is it going to be easier for the PLO to develop a peace strategy with Hamas in the tent than it was when Hamas was outside the tent? Will it be easier for the Palestinian Authority and the PLO to deal with the international legal issues that now, with membership in the United Nations, should that be achieved, will lead to a very big business for lawyers on both sides? Palestine will bring Israel before the International Court of Justice, the International Criminal Court. Israel will bring Palestine before the two institutions, and it'll be a boom day for litigious legal maneuverings. Not sure how that helps the peace process. Israel says it wants peace, and yet settlements, and more settlements, including now, as opposed to what the Israeli Supreme Court decided almost 20 years ago, including now the beginning again of confiscation of Palestinian private land. It's not just settlements on so-called state land, but it's confiscating or legalizing the seizure of private land for settlements, which eat up the very territory about which Israeli leaders say they want to negotiate. Second, Israeli leaders say that there's a new precondition, which is acceptance of Israel as a Jewish state. Now, all societies have the right to define their own cultural, ethnic, political characteristics. But it's really unheard of in international relations to expect another country to recognize the characteristics of a society as opposed to recognizing giving diplomatic recognition. So you have these activities by Israel and this precondition which have taken it off in a different direction. And finally, you have the United States. The United States, over the course of the past 3 years under the presidency of Barack Obama, has tried 4 tactical approaches to instigating or invigorating the peace process. First was the idea of a settlements freeze, which, as nice as it would have been to achieve, was not ever in the realm of possible achievement as a precondition for negotiations. Now, for those of you who want to Google what I have written since I've left government, I have focused a great deal of attention on settlements policies. I am not a supporter of settlements. But to expect that Israel is going to stop settlement activity, including natural growth in advance of negotiations, is not realistic. Second, the idea of proximity talks. Palestinians reportedly did bring substance to proximity talks. Israel did not. Third, direct negotiations. They lasted 3 weeks. And then the president, on May 13th, suggested a trade-off in negotiations of borders and security. And as soon as Israel